Hello, my wonderful people. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on your time zone or anytime you are coming across my platform. If it is your first time and you like what we are doing in this platform, kindly like, subscribe, put on your notification bell to all notification. And I want to appreciate you too for creating this wonderful platform that we are using to disseminate information. At the same time, I put a disclaimer that here in Linda's TV show, we do not promote misleading information, hate speech, or violence. We are here to educate and inform the members of the public about what is happening, and also YouTube to tell you that a call for self-determination is not a call for war. Great people, I greet you all. Let's watch today's video, and after that, let's come to the comment section to air our mind and our opinion constructively. Thank you.
One thing, how do we know the politicians, especially the corrupt one, is when we talk about the sit-at-home civil disobedience, they will be telling you how people are dying. The pregnant women, this is the, so whenever you hear them saying this, you know that it's a corrupt politician saying it. Because the same people will not talk about those who are dying when they were not sit at home. They didn't tell you how many women died because there is no hospital in their villages. They did not tell you how many people died because they don't have the money to pay to doctor before doctor can attend to them.
So what makes you different from the government in place that is not providing health care to citizens?
That's what we are saying now. That
what makes you different from the governments?
We are going to use every mechanism known to man and known to the devil, if I may use that, to liberate our people from the government, then give them the life they want. And that is exactly. Do you prefer a conventional war to this civil disobedience?
Yeah, hello guys. You need to watch this debate on DV African News, which Simon had with some other African men. I think you need to watch this video. Simon really proved himself a leader on this interview, on this debate. You need to watch it and make sure you click the share button, share it around, and if you haven't followed my page, click the follow button. I have more updates to share with you. Thank you.
Mr. Simon, tell me, what does democracy mean to you?
What democracy means to me is exactly what we are enjoying in the Western world. What I enjoy in Finland is what democracy means for me. Supposed to be the government of the people, for the people, by the people, and for the people. But in Africa, I don't think the definition of democracy is what we have here today. And I'm very happy. I'm very, very happy to be part of this particular program, where we are going to enlighten people, especially those from the Africa, from the continent of Africa, to know that we, the modern, the new generation, and the Pan-Africanists are ready to change the paradigm shift, make a paradigm shift in African democracy. Thank you.
Where do you actually place your level of agitation within this framework when we talk about democracy? That question goes to you, Mr. Ekpa.
Thank you very much, Mimi. Before going to addressing that your question, I would like to respond to my friend from Ambbazonia. He mentioned about tailoring Africa democracy to suit our own, way of life, and maybe we have to tailor the Africa democracy according to the norms and customs of Africa people. I would be very pleased if in his next response he can just mention one country in Africa that is practicing a true democracy and that is even close or closer to what he defined as what should be the true democracy for Africa, or to mention one Africa country that have tailored this particular democracy that suit their own custom and norms. None country in Africa has actually done that. So, having said that, when you look at the present democracy in Africa, I will take Nigeria, for example. Nigeria, according to the African people, they say is the giant of Africa, I believe. So when we are making reference to Africa, Nigeria should be one of the, the country that we can take solace from. So Nigeria, for example, in the last election, it is not just about last election, but in the last general election and the previous elections and other elections since 1999. Every election ends to the court of law. Is that what we should be proud of, to call a democracy, where the people will go out to vote, they will be butchered, then after that, someone who may have not even participated in the election will be sitting somewhere in the name of being a judge, and then the people will go to the judge and the judge will decide who win election and who lost the election. This is happening almost everywhere in Africa. That is not a democracy. He is living in the United States, and I believe that he should have give me a very good instances of where some of these kind of elections in the United States end up to the court of law. We know that there are disputes sometimes arising from the elections, maybe in election malpractices, or someone will have a divergent view about the outcome of the election. You would like to seek a redress. But in every African country, almost every African country, there is always chaos, there is always killings, there is always bloodshed, bloodbath during the election. And those who have more weapons or more talks, political talks, always win the election. And he is from Cameroon, today fighting for Ambbazonia. And in his own country, I believe the current president of Cameroon have been there for over 30 years. Every 8 years or every 4 years, he imposed himself on the people of Cameroon. Is that what he should be saying? Africa is a good democracy and he is fighting for the freedom of Ambbazonia people. I want to also make one point here, very clear today. It is only the Republic of Biafra, only in the history of Africa, that has gone closer to what we call democracy. Because in 1969, the Republic of Biafra drafted a constitution that was almost the best in the entire Africa.
So, Mr. Tapo, is this something that you want to step in and say?
Yeah, it's something I would like to respond.
Please not respond, but please. This constitution of Biafra draws this particular democratic principles from our custom and the culture. It is there. Yeah. So, and because of this particular drawing this particular solace from our culture and custom, the West, of course, they envied Biafra, and Biafra, was defeated by Western powers during the war between Nigeria and Biafra, genocidal war. So we know all this. It is in the history.
Yeah, let me.
And that's the reason somebody like me is today pursuing the independent state of Biafra, so that we are going to bring a true democracy to Africa, where the voice of the people will be heard, and not just when you go to the ballot box, someone out there in the court will now decide who becomes the winner. And even as that, the judges are corrupt.
A lot is happening in Africa. When we talk about democracy today, you, Mr. Simon, and if you agree on one thing, is the fact that is power to the people. Do you think that the people in Africa today have the power with them? Mr. Simon?
Is no. The answer is no. From my perspective, the answer is complete no. And I'm going to give you instances. I will always use Nigeria as an example.
Let me disagree.
In Nigeria today, when you come out as a citizen to demonstrate, you get killed by the military, by the police, as ordered by the leaders who were, democratically elected. Is that a democracy? The answer is no. Does it mean that power belongs to the people? The answer is no. Now, if you go to Nigeria today and say you want to preach Biafra, like I'm doing now, I will get killed.
Mr. Simon, let me just step in now.
Let me explain. When we want to measure democracy based on the power of the people,
yes, Mr. Simon. Mr. Simon.
There's nothing like power belongs to the people in Africa.
Mr. Simon, it's either I'm the one in control of the debate, or I am not actually in control. You are talking about the situation on the ground, that if you go out today to protest, you'll be killed. But you are also imposing lockdown on young people, young children also.
That's a very wrong word. That's a very wrong word. It is not.
Is that democratic? Because those who do not follow it are being punished.
When you are tyrannic government, you are going to be treated with the same equal measure and equal hand. You are treating the people.
But most of your victims are the citizens. You said the power should be to the people. And most of your victims are citizens. They are not the government.
Did they complain to you?
Let me just chime in here. Did any
Biafra complain to you?
Let me just chime in here before I see.
The people that are complaining are the people who are targeting, which is the government of Nigeria, and they are suffering that particular imposition.
Let me support. I want to support Mr. Simon Ekpa on one point. I believe Biafra borrowed. I want to talk about Africa in general, but let me just talk about this because it came up. I believe they borrowed some of the strategies from Ambbazonia, which was very inclusive, or which is still very inclusive. Ghost towns is for the people, by the people. Boycotts for the people, by the people. Civil disobedience against the tyrannic regimes of Paul Biya of neighboring Cameroon and also Buhari, the former Buhari and now Tinubu of Nigeria, is for the people and by the people. I mean, these are all peaceful strategies.
Mr. Ivo, let me come in
from Ambbazonia and what Biafra did not borrow from Ambbazonia. Ambbazonia is not the infector, or they did not infect the sit-at-home order. It has been there since ages. So I don't know what the rationale.
Mr. Simon, can I come in here and talk? I'm very, very happy to hear that Mr. Tapang is saying that the ghost town and the lockdowns are for the people and by the people. Do you think that is what is prevailing in the English-speaking regions of Cameroon today? Let us be honest.
That has been working for the last.
Do you think that people are happy to be in ghost town, to have the ghost town situation that is existing?
Yes, the people are extremely happy and are respecting those strategies, those non-violent strategies of obedience. And I've never seen a democracy where people engage in non-violent strategies but are being killed by their own regimes. But that does not mean there is no democracy in Africa. There are other countries that are promoting and engaging in democratic practices. I wish Cameroon should follow this, the likes of Ghana, Senegal, for example, and even Botswana.
Some of the school children are not being killed just by the government forces who are on the ground. Those calling for lockdown, the separatists calling for lockdown.
But this is not verified information. It's not verified.
Also involved. Of course, I am a journalist and I'm covering some of these things happening in Cameroon.
But you, I was also a journalist.
We have the opportunity to
it's being documented.
Today, Mimi, today, you are giving us the opportunity to bring the fact to the table. So you listen to us while we tell you what is on ground.
But then I bring the question because I am here to conduct the discussion and bring the question so that people can understand what is happening on the ground. People have to
explain.
Because I am here to ask the question.
So can you allow us to explain that your question so that everybody?
Yes, of course. Of course, you talk about it. But
it is quite absurd, you know, to sit here and listening to people, you know, drawing some kind of similarity or drawing some kind of references from a freedom fighting movement. And then you want to bring in democracy into it. It is quite absurd. We are talking about state that has gotten independent and the independent state. We are not talking about a freedom fighting movement.
Yeah.
It's completely different.
Yeah.
And so you don't talk about democracy into it. What we are talking about, how can we delegitimize the government that are oppressing our people within our land? So it is not about democracy. It is when we have gotten our independence, we are going to practice the true democracy that will be drawn from our normal traditional rule models and whatever we want to do it to make it work for us.
So how do you give power to the people? How do you give power to the people?
It is not about, you don't give power to the people during a freedom fighting. You are fighting war.
You're fighting for freedom.
You cannot give power to the people. You need to make sure you control the territory that the enemies and the oppressors are using to kill your people. First of all, control it by any means possible.
Let me come in.
You're right as well.
Let me come in. The mere fact that we're talking about Ambbazonia Ambbazonia exists as a nation dating back to 1961, known as the former British Southern Cameroons. I will not go into the nitty-gritties, but Mr. Simon is absolutely right. If we're talking about functional states recognized by the United Nations, non-functional states that have not been recognized but seeking for their self-determination should not even be considered in the debate of a democracy, because we are freedom fighters. We are fighting to have freedom, which is a fundamental tenet of democracy. We are fighting to liberate ourselves, which means we are not even functioning within the so-called democracy. But let's look at it at African level, in general, across Africa. Is there democracy? Yes, there is a gradual movement towards democracy. People are increasingly speaking out. We've seen it in the case of Niger. There is mass mobilization at an African level. Diaspora contributions are also counting in. People are increasingly having mobile phones to counteract, to talk against the government, alternative media. This is exactly where we are driving to. And this is the Africa we want to see. However, we don't support any Western nation that wants to impose its sanctions on us for us to embrace their own ideologies. It would not work that way. That is why we keep having a conflict in democracy in Africa. But let's keep away all these quasi-states and non-functional and non-recognizable states by the United Nations.
Let me come in here to state that Ambbazonia, the word, it was Southern Cameroons, and Ambbazonia came after the 1980s. In the 1960s,
no, Ambbazonia is just a name. It's just an appellation. It's just like Nigeria. Maybe
Ambbazonia didn't exist before 1980.
Ambbazonia is just a name. We can call it any name. We can call it Mimimefo. We can call it Ivo.
But
Ambazonia's name by nature is the former British Southern Cameroons. Let me use the word former British Southern Cameroons.
Yeah, that was just to clarify the viewers that Ambbazonia came later and that before was British Southern Cameroons.
I agree.
Mr. Tabang Ivo, so the question now is, we want power to the people. We want democracy in Africa. We want things to change. We don't want the dictatorship in Africa.
I agree.
How best can we go about it, making sure that the rights, the basic rights of citizens on the continent, the basic rights of people in our respective countries are being respected?
I have a parsimonial solution to this. Very simple. And I believe everyone on this panel will agree with me. The mere fact that we youths are sitting here to talk about democracy is a plus. However, we African youths are interested in using the social media for fashion, showbiz, Gucci, Versace, and all of those. When is the last time you saw African youths without an election phase coming up, without an electoral fraud happening? When is the last time you saw African youths talking about democracy, talking about elections, planning ahead? We never plan ahead. We only wait for when elections come
and begin to make comments on Mr.
in future. It's not suddenly that he wake up and say there is Biafra today. No, it's a long process. He has gone through struggles.
But
the youth must be aware that politics shape our future. And for us to have a bright future,
Mr. Tanko, please. Mr. Tanko, let me disagree with you on one thing you said, that Bola Tinubu won the election. You don't just sit here and begin to make comments on other countries that you know nothing about. You don't know how the process of the election happened in 2023. So you can't sit here and say in Nigeria, Bola Tinubu won the election. He never won the election. He never won the election. Why would you sit here as a freedom fighter telling us how somebody won the election in Nigeria?
He's the president.
He can be a president. That is why we are seated here today to talk about.
Mr. Simon, there is one solution to this. We can go on to disagree and debate whether who won the election. But if we don't prepare now, we will have the same thing. If we don't prepare now, we will keep on complaining and complaining.
So let me come in.
Please, it is my turn. You called me. And please,
gentlemen, let me come in now.
Bola Tinubu did not win the election.
Mr. Simon, let me come in now to just ask you a question.
Go ahead.
How do we give power to the people? Because you are saying that today we are talking democracy. We want people to have the voice. We want things to work in favor of the people, and that you are ready to do what it takes for African youth to get there. How are you going about it, and what are you doing to make sure that power gets to the young people and that their rights are not being violated in the process?
Thank you very much. I'm going to give you a very straight answer to that. You know, I like this. Please, nobody should interrupt me, because this is a very good one. The way we are going to make Africa work and bring true democracy, either the democracy of using our own modus of democracy, like our own cultural and traditional norms, is by losing up, disintegrating Africa along tribal lines. That is number one step. Africa needs to be disintegrated along tribal lines, so that you are going to have a nation with like-minded people, without anybody having a beef, without anybody not understanding your language, without anybody coming to the table where he is eating rice and you are eating a pounded yam, or that you don't understand what he's talking about when he is discussing with his brother. So we need to disintegrate Africa. This is what Europeans did, and they know the secret to the success of their democracy. Because once you have a divergent, if you have a diversity that is a very dangerous one, it can never work, because everybody will want to, he wants something he wants for his people to happen, and it may be going the other way, conflicting the interest of the other. So for us to move forward in Africa, we need to begin to understand, what did the Europeans do? What did the Europeans do to come to where they are today? They disintegrated along tribal lines. That's why in Scandinavia today, they have different languages. As smaller as they are independent. The Soviet Union fell, and everybody disintegrated, because they could not stand the heat of the diversity. When the diversity becomes so dangerous, it is what is happening in Africa today. So for us to move forward, please, for us to move forward, like I said, we start from, I have been saying it, that Biafra is going to be the beginning of true democracy in Africa. And I repeat, I'm standing here to say it again, because in Biafra, once Biafra is actualized and becoming an independent state, we are going to have a loosed up confederation of Biafra, where every tribe, if I will use the word tribe, or every ethnic group that finds himself in Biafra will have independence and will have autonomy. They are going to have their own law.
Yes, Simon, let me ask you another question here.
That is the only way. That is the only way and the only time.
Okay, Mr. Simon, are you saying that all the Igbo people should think alike?
I disagree.
No. It is not about everybody, Igbo people thinking alike. No, but we have one common thing. We have one thing in common: progressive, success.
Can I speak with you?
The issue now is, how do we attain progress? It becomes the issue to be debated. It becomes the issue to be debated within the government. Okay?
Yes, we have to
these policies are clearly. These policies
has to talk a little bit before we come to.
Can you just stop interrupting, please? Every Igbo man wants to have a good road. Every Igbo man wants to go to a good school. Every Igbo man wants a good hospital. Every Igbo man wants a good life. So how do you bring it, to the people? It becomes the issue of debate. It becomes the politics we are going to play. So it is not about everybody we have like mind. Our like mind is that we are progressive. And we want to progress. So whatever that is going to bring on the table to make us progress and attain that thing we want is what everybody want to follow. And you don't have any now in Nigeria today. The reason why we are saying let us have autonomy in Nigeria, they say no, because Igbo people want they want good road, they want good hospital, they want international airport. We travel a lot. White people in the north don't travel. They don't go anywhere. If they want to travel, they go to Saudi Arabia. So there is nothing in common. They are not progressive. They are nomadic. While we are progressive, we want to live in good house. They don't live in good house. They live in the bushes. How do you progress with such kind of diversity? It is absurd. Some people want school. The other people in the north don't want to school. They don't want to study. We have what we call quota system in Nigeria. Where somebody in the South will get 200 cut-off mark to study law, he cannot get admission into the university. While somebody in the North will get 80, and he will be admitted. So these are the problems.
I don't think we should tribalize this debate.
Yes, Mr. Simon,
let's not tribalize this debate.
Mr. Simon, I will disagree here with you. No, I will have to disagree with you, because we also have citizens in the far north region of Cameroon, and in Cameroon, the far north region is one of the, I should say, the places in the country where illiteracy rate is very high, development is almost inexistent. There are bad roads, access to potable water is not even possible, and then we have Boko Haram also in the far north region. So because of this situation, you cannot say that it is existing because the people do not want development. It's because of bad governance, and that is why.
And who are the governors? And who are those governing?
Mr. Fabrice, I am sending this question to you to find out from you, what should politicians in Africa do to make sure that this actually happens? That leadership doesn't only end at the level of social media.
He who is courageous enough should stay back in his country and fight the enemy within. If you die in the process, that is the price to pay as a freedom fighter. And that's the message I want to send to anyone who is a freedom fighter or who calls himself a freedom fighter, whether you come from Cameroon, from South Sudan, from Angola, from Mozambique, or wherever in the continent. I have dared to stay in Cameroon, in Yaoundé, since the crisis started. And of course, Mr. Tampa knows my political party, Popular Action Party of Justice Aya Paul Abine, and the persecution we have gone through, the prisons, the intimidations, and the difficult times we have gone through. It is not about imposing your ideas on the mind and giving people your doctrine as the absolute truth. This conversation we are having is followed by men of integrity and dignity, followers and people who admire one or any of us on this platform. And the attitude we put to the debate is very important. I just beseech, if one is given his few minutes to argue, let's argue constructively and just deliver our ideas and pass it on. We do not, no one holds the magic wand. No one holds the absolute truth as to how best things should be done in any context. Our ideas are just relative and it just have few decades to live. But the sustainability of these ideas depend on how we put it on ground, who we were, track record of our activities, and our personalities. I want to emphasize that democracy is important for every society, depending on the leadership, depending on the heart of the leader himself or herself, depending on the institution or the group or the party that carries out this leadership. These lockdowns are having positive or negative impact on the people concerned. In as much as there is no organization or a barometer to measure these, I am not sure that the people are comfortable with lockdowns. Because the humanitarian, economic, and social impact of these is on the vulnerable women, children, girls, who on these days of lockdown do not have accessibility to basic necessities. A woman who is pregnant and supposed to give birth to that particular day of lockdown may die in their house or have complications which might be a psychological trauma for the rest of her life. Or some kind of business people who will have urgencies and to catch up, they might not because these lockdowns are on the days. There are thousand strategies to advocate for change, for autonomy, for whatever agenda you have, without necessarily making the impact to be more, the percentage of the negative impact to be more on the people. Unless, I insist, you have a barometer to say that your people are comfortable with what you are saying. And of course, if we were to take the contemporary issues making headline in African news, we will say that the people of Niger will prefer a coup because the former leader was making some ties that did not suit the people. And the people came in their normal, in their different stadiums to acclaim such a kind of popular action might be an approval of someone's agenda. But without such, if it is just about the Facebook conversations, about the WhatsApp discussions, that is no measure.
Yes, Mr.
That is no measure. So I disapprove of any control from the diaspora.
Mr. Fabrice, can you hear me? We're about to conclude on this discussion. I want to ask a final question because you talked about diaspora and people who are agitating from the diaspora and demanding for change in their respective countries. I should say that the diaspora has been playing a lot of role, very, very instrumental role, because many people who are sometimes back home cannot do the things that people are in the diaspora are capable of doing. For instance, fighting against right violations, calling for press freedom, and fighting against press censorship. For instance, I'm a victim of press censorship in Cameroon, and I've done my own part when it comes to fighting against censorship in the country. So let's talk about the role of the diaspora now in advocating for democracy, the role of the diaspora in advocating for democracy in Africa. What should the diaspora do to make things different? Let me start with you, Mr. Tapan Ivor. What should the diaspora do to make things different?
Yeah, thanks, Mimi. Just to make a correction here, the fact that we are not freedom fighters on the ground doesn't mean that we are not freedom fighters, as Mr. Fabrice dubiously explained. The fact that you are a politician back home and you have not been arrested, you have not been killed, like other politicians whom I know, other lawyers whom I know, it means you are playing to the gallery of the dictator in power. Let me keep that aside. Let me talk about what the diaspora contribution is all about. First, we are seated in I would say, multipolar world. Things have evolved. We're in a globalized world, what Marshall McLuhan will call a global village. We use the social media. We communicate instantaneously to our people back home. We're engaging in the same strategies that Gandhi engaged in. Biafra is doing the same lockdown that Gandhi did. Biafra is doing the same civil disobedience that Gandhi did. Ambbazonia is doing the same boycotts that Gandhi did. Why should we hail Gandhi as a hero and hail Simon Ekpa and Ivo as non-heroes? It doesn't make any sense to me. But again, I want to make sure that we are tailoring this conversation to the African perspective. I don't want us to tribalize it maybe to Biafra or Nigeria. I know there are people watching from Kenya, people watching from Ethiopia, people watching from other countries. They want to also hear the concerns. We in the diaspora, if I can sit in the diaspora and send money back home to my people, to my family back home, to help them economically, every month I do that, to help my own family whom the government has neglected. If I can help the people back home economically, why shouldn't I help the people back home from abroad politically? Give me a reason why. The government hasn't ever stopped me from helping my family back home, but the government is trying to stifle my freedom from helping political changes, engaging in political changes back home. The government hasn't stopped me, I'm talking at an African perspective, hasn't stopped me from investing back home, but the government has stopped me from investing in political changes back home and has blacklisted and exiled me. So how do you marry these two? The diaspora has a huge concern when it comes to transforming political reforms back home. Look, we are all in the diaspora. We use the social media. The Arab Spring it comes to mind readily, even though it was corrupted at some point when it came to Libya. But I believe that our advocacy for change must start now, not when an election is coming up in the next 7 years. Not when Tinubu has frauded the election, as maybe there could be a debate about Tinubu and Obi, who whatever happens. We cannot only talk about that and it dies out. No, let's start planning now for the change we want to see tomorrow. We youths should start publishing pictures of hush puppy in flashy jets and wearing all kinds of Gucci. It doesn't help the transformation of Africa.
Mr.
The transformation of Africa are daily debates like this.
Mr. Tapan Ivo, sometimes I wonder if you actually hear me or you are just ignoring me. But I wanted to ask, because you mentioned Gandhi, he was in India, actually abroad, like you said, but he actually didn't impose conditions that affected his fellow Indians. He was in India, like you said, but he did not impose conditions that affected his own citizens. Can you say the same for happenings in the English-speaking parts of Cameroon today?
Again, as Mr. Simon Ekpa has rightly put it, I don't want us to come back to it. We don't have a country. There is no English-speaking regions. We have Ambbazonia. We have Biafra. We don't have Calabar. We have Biafra. We don't have a country yet. We are fighting for freedom, meaning we don't even have the freedom. And we will never successfully please 100% of people. There will be that Judah in every 12.
Mr. Simon, you have the floor now. Tell us how can we reshape the role of the diaspora in terms of promoting democracy on the continent?
Thank you very much. Actually, Ivo has said a lot of things that is in my mind. But however, I wouldn't say much without addressing Fabric, what he said last. One thing, how do we know the politicians, especially the corrupt one, is when we talk about the sit-at-home civil disobedience, they will be telling you how people are dying. The pregnant women, this is the, so whenever you hear them saying this, you know that it's a corrupt politician saying it. Because the same people will not talk about those who are dying when there were no sit-at-home. They didn't tell you how many women died because there is no hospital in their villages. They did not tell you how many people died because they don't have the money to pay to a doctor before doctor can attend to them.
So what makes you different from the government in place that is not providing health care?
That's exactly what I'm saying now. That
what makes you different from the government?
We are going to use every mechanism known to man and known to the devil, if I may use that, to liberate our people from the government, then give them the life they want. And that is exactly, do you prefer a conventional war to this civil disobedience? In Ukraine today, are you going to ask people, why are the bombs dropping there? They are fighting for freedom. These are people who already have independence. They have their own country. Today, they are being invented. Are you going to say that the women is now, that the president of Ukraine have committed atrocity for engaging Russia, trying to liberate his people? No. You see, when you are talking about a freedom fighting, trying to liberate your people from subjugation, from slavery, you use everything you can just think of. And the only thing you are thinking is to make sure you destroy the enemy.
So does freedom include punishing the same people you are fighting the freedom?
It depends on what you understand by punishing. What do you mean by punishing? Is the punishing you are giving them worse than what?
Lockdowns are not punishments.
There is nothing like punishment here.
Shooting children.
No.
It is not punishment.
It is not punishment. It is called measures. Measures. It is not punishment. In our own perspective and from our own context, it is not punishment. It is measures. And those measures are not targeted at our people, but targeted at the government. And remember, the government cannot function without the people. This is something you people should understand. There is no government without the people. So when we are doing these things, we are not targeting our people. It doesn't make sense. We are targeting the government. And let me tell you now, from the Biafra side, we've made Nigeria government lost over $20 billion for the last 2 years. The records are there. So is it the people that are losing the money? The answer is no. Because we still give them the opportunity to do their businesses at the end of the day. So what we are targeting is to also delegitimize the government, making sure that we rubbish the government before international community to show them that they don't have any capacity to control the territory that we are controlling. Today, we have made that very clear, and the international community, everybody knows for the past 2 years, Nigeria government is struggling and threatening people. What about that? They are threatening to shut down market for those who did not open market. So who is now threatening the citizen? Is it us or the government? The government also threatening to shut down the market. They even killed in Enugu state. They killed many people who did not open their shop. Why are you people not talking about those ones? Why are you focusing on these particular measures that we are putting to delegitimize the government? And it is working for us. So please, when you see politicians like this, they are evil.
The point is that, Mr. Simon, we are advocating or talking about change on the continent, and
that is what
we are talking about
change. You can never have change with this kind of mindset. No, you can never have change. You can never have change.
Mr. Simon, please listen. And if we are talking about change, we are looking at people who are different from those who are already there in power, who are still in power. We are not talking about those who come and impose the same pain, like you are saying, who will come and impose their decisions, impose their conditions on the people. So let me move right away to Mr. Fabrice Lena. Mr. Fabrice, how can the diaspora utilize the power that they've got? Because whether you like it or not, the diaspora youths, they've got the power, they've got a voice, they've got what it takes to bring about change in their respective countries and across the continent. How can they better utilize this power that they have got?
The best way to go about it is starting from you, the journalist, not being biased in your report, making sure that you push to the public.
That's why we gave you the voice.
But I don't have every right, to say, because I have a lot to say today. I didn't say.
No, bring on board next time. Like I said, we can talk for the next 10 hours.
Yeah.
But we try to balance the panel so that everyone can come on board and share their thoughts.
Yes.
But then we cannot talk the whole time because we have other programs to coming up. So
yes. Anyway, the way to move forward and bring true democracy to Africa is what the Biafra people, of which I am the Prime Minister, is doing. Today we are inaugurating the Biafra government administrative office in the United States, Maryland, Baltimore, and in next month we are having the Biafra self-referendum convention, first ever self-referendum convention. It means that we are giving the Biafra people the opportunity to choose by themselves how they want to live. That is the true democracy, when you give the people the opportunity to decide. And so we are doing that and exactly towing that line. So in Africa, we don't need to start killing. We don't need AK-47 when people say, I don't want again. I don't want to be part of you. It is universal human right. Allow the person to go. You mustn't say you die here with me. No, that is not democracy. If Ambbazonia cannot conduct a referendum to decide whether they want to be part of Cameroon, are you going to say it's a democracy? If Biafra cannot conduct a referendum and say they don't want to be part of Nigeria again, and you say no, it must be part of Nigeria, that is not democracy. So that's why my own perspective of democracy in Africa, there is no democracy anywhere in Africa, because anytime any group spring up and say we don't want to be part of you again, you will see military there. Anywhere in Africa, we must end in fight. It's not a democracy. So the West, even though every once in a while people use Catalonia to give example, they're not fighting for freedom, but they have autonomy. They have autonomy. In most of those countries in Africa, they don't even give them autonomy. So we need to begin to see the need to allow people who don't want to be part of you again to go. It is just the same thing like in marriage. When the husband says, I don't want to marry you again, you don't force the person to marry you. Otherwise, it's going to enter your debt. So Africa should look up to Biafra. We are coming. And it is going to happen very, very soon. We are going to lead by example. So everybody should focus on what Biafrans are doing and what we're going to do in the nearest future. Thank you very much.
Mr. Tapang Ivor, what is the way forward for Cameroon, for Africa as a whole? What is the best way to go about instilling democracy on the continent?
Yeah, thanks. I did not know that I was coming on this show to talk about self-determination, fight for the creation of new countries and the rest. I don't think it's even related to the central agenda of today's World Democracy Day. That's another. Let's make another topic for that. I don't know, someday. But I would say there are a couple of key points that I'll gather from everyone seated here. Simon Ekpa mentioned something which was very critical, and I want to emphasize on it. First, the dissolution of borders, tribal borders, is great, but at a national level, I want to make sure that this is done. in the African Declaration, the formation of the African Union, even the seat declaration, the Lagos Plan of Action, that was all rolled out. That at some point, all African countries should dissolve their borders, form a union or an African Union or United States of Africa, where we can have international commerce, international trade. That is a way forward towards staving off bad governance and the rest. Second, democracy comes with its own perk of hypocrisy. And this is the biggest challenge Africa is facing today. France supporting Ukraine, but France will not support the coup that is happening in Niger. France supported the coup that happened in Ukraine in 2014, but will not support the same coup that happens in Niger.
What do you have to say about this?
My wonderful people, as you have finished watching this interesting video, please, I want to see your comment, your contribution, your opinion in the comment section. Like I said earlier, let us do it constructively. Tell me what you think about this video that you have just watched, and also about the platform. If you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? Please remember to subscribe, put on your notification bell, share this video, and remain blessed.